All right, what's going on, coaches? This is Korey Harris, and we're back with another one-on-one with the transition. I have a very, very special guest, my man, Shareef Abdur-Rahim, all-star, and now the president of the NBA G League. Shareef, thank you so much for your time today, man. It's a pleasure and an honor.
Korey, thank you for having me.
Oh, man. So I got a lot that I want to dive into, but first, let's start off with somewhat of like your origins. You're born and raised here in Atlanta, Georgia. I didn't know that. I thought you were from Marietta at first, and it kind of made me smile because I'm from Marietta, but you're actually from College Park, right?
Yeah.
So
I grew up, Southwest Atlanta. So, like Park of Recreations, Walkmall Park, Sandtown, before that, Jefferson Gymnasium, in East Point. Those all, kind of the, parks and gyms that I grew up, running around in, playing, Atlanta, public city kind of, Fulton County, grassroots basketball. And then when I finished middle school, my mother, she moved to Marietta, and that's where Wheeler High School and kind of the Marietta origins come from. But I at this point, at that time, Korey, the city felt a lot bigger. Now Marietta, Atlanta, is so interchangeable. I think it's all pretty much metro, and I think I'm part of the same kind of family, so to speak.
yeah, that was a different time. Like we weren't a hub for grassroots basketball like we are now. The state of Georgia being where so many of the league's talent it can be found year in and year out. So speak to the difference in just the basketball culture and the scene when you were coming up at that time. Like you were a trailblazer, one of the first.
Yeah, I think from a high school grassroots standpoint, one, I think grassroots, AAU, whatever you call it, has taken a huge kind of leap forward, and in some ways is probably more prevalent now than your high school body of work, right? Or even high school basketball in some ways. In my time, from a grassroots standpoint, it was maybe 4 AAU teams, and really in the city it was 2. So it was I played more within the Fulton County umbrella, and that group was ran Team Georgia, that was ran by Albert Outlaw, Coach Outlaw, and Coach Outlaw kind of oversaw Fulton County Park and Recreations, and our hub was Birdhead Gymnasium, and kind of the other prevalent program at that time, grassroots, was then came more from the city of Atlanta, and that was Coach Prather and Coach McCray. And that at the time, a lot of people don't talk about this, but it was like the Atlanta Lakers, and then the younger team, the younger groups were like the Celtics, and so the guys that I grew up playing against were like Larry Brown. He ended up playing basketball and football. He was a heck of a football player at the University of Georgia. Jabari Smith Sr. For some time, Yasir Roseman, who's a coach now at Indiana and played at Oregon, but then later he came over with us at Team Georgia. But that group, those 2 fractions in the city, were really what kind of out of that came the Celtics. But prior to that, it was the Atlanta Lakers, and it really was like divided between 2 kind of Fulton County, which was like south of the city, and then heart and soul city of Atlanta, Parks and Recreation, which Coach Prather and Coach McCray ran, and that's where everything came from. Again, it was like this is before the shoe circus and so on and so forth. And you had just really competitive game at that time. One team made it out of the state, so like every year it would come down between really our program and Coach Prather and Coach McCray's program, battling to see who could make out of stadium for, I'll be honest, for many years, it was, like the Atlanta Lakers that, they were the team. And I think maybe my sophomore, my junior year, we finally kind of broke through. But that so that was the, I say, grassroots side of the AAU side of it. And then the high school side of it, I grew up in, Southwest Atlanta, watching Atlanta Public City. So, the high schools I watched at that time, some of them are not even, around, but, this is like the, mid 90s, early 90s, some of those high schools, so like North Fulton High School, Northside High School, George High School, those were the, schools, Carver High School, that was the basketball in the city that, I grew up watching. Martise Moore, Octavius Thompson, those were James Forrest, those were the players that were kind of the older guys that I looked up to coming out of the city. At that time, Wheeler, is renowned now, but before Coach Lipscomb, Douglas Lipscomb, who was my high school coach, he came in my sophomore year. Before he came, we won, 4 games the entire year as a freshman. By my junior year, we won a state championship. My senior year, we lost in the state championship. But it was honestly, Marietta, in that area at the time, it was a football area. It wasn't at all a basketball area. The really good basketball programs were Douglas High School, Mays High School. If you went, you go to Macon, you go to Savannah and Beach. Those were the really powerhouse. LaGrange, those were the really powerhouse high school basketball programs, and kind of what what you've seen, built in I'd say in Wheeler. I think it started there, but other schools, Pebblebrook, Milton. I think Wheeler started, Coach, and if I'm just being honest, Coach Lipscomb, he started it, and Coach Thompson has done a great job carrying it forward. But I think from that, you see even Marietta becoming a true hub for basketball in the Metro Atlanta area.
Wow, a lot right there. I didn't even know, man. It started with 2. It started with 2. That's amazing. So talk about then your recruitment process going from Wheeler to Cal, because other than Jaylen Brown, who's after you, I haven't really seen too many kids, especially from the Southeast, go to the West Coast for basketball.
Yeah, I think it wasn't it wasn't at all something that I planned, and in many ways, like the world was, or basketball world, the world in general was a lot smaller then. So I didn't know a lot about Cal. The programs I grew up, I grew up watching, being able to go to, all the, ACC games, all the Georgia Tech games. So, all those guys, the Georgia Tech teams, the North Carolina, Duke teams, Southeastern Conference, Kentucky, Arkansas. Those were the, schools I grew up on, the basketball programs I grew up on. And what, Coach Bozeman, he was the coach at Cal at that time. He just did an outstanding job of like marketing and sharing the Cal experience, and what Cal had to offer beyond basketball. And I think one of the great things that Wheeler did for me as a high school is it forced me to have a broader perspective just about life and education and other elements, and see some of the my classmates who weren't athletes. Some of the they were just going they were going to Ivy League schools and these great institutions that had nothing to do with basketball. So that kind of opened my mind to just the type of schools that I wanted to at least consider. And then Coach Bozeman came in with Cal, and he did a great job of sharing and talking about the university and to be honest, he did an outstanding job of selling my mother on Cal. And that, like that made me open my mind up of like leaving, I'd never, really, left the Southeast, opened my mind up about leaving, Atlanta and, going to school at Cal.
Do you think that more, not just athletes, but young people in general need to go beyond what they've seen and what they maybe know and try different things like that to expand and better prepare themselves for the future?
Well, I think it's important to have an open mind, and to explore. I think, credit to my parents, they truly allowed me to make the decision. And, they guided me and they were there and, talked through the process with me. But, they truly allowed me to make the decision. And, my mother wanted me to, talk to the coaches and get to know them and the schools and learn as much about them as I could, but then they allowed me to make decisions. So I think it's important to have an open mind and the one thing I talk to young people about is trying to have a big picture vision of yourself and your plans and where you want to go, because you cannot in any way at 18, 19 years old, truly know and understand, all the opportunities, everything that's going to come to you, right? And so, I mean, I just think, so in that, I think it's really, important that, you really open your mind to really thinking about what, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, what will be, the best opportunity for you to, as a person, grow and continue to grow and be a part of a institution.
For sure, for sure. No, love that answer. Fast forward a little bit, talk about, obviously it's been some time since, but the legacy of where you stand in that 96 draft class, what it means to you now versus maybe even what you were thinking at a young age, where maybe you were just thinking, I'm just happy to be getting drafted to the league, right?
Yeah, I mean, you never, I mean, in a million years, you can't predict, at least in the moment, you don't predict just, how impactful a draft and the careers that people will have. And, I think all of us were just so excited to be seeing our dreams come true. I think, I think, one of the distinguishing factors about that draft is like the diversity of where guys came from. It's probably one of the first of this era truly international drafts, if you think about it. Steve Nash, Vladimir Potapenko, Zydrunas Ilgauskas, Peja Stojakovic, right? So it's like one of the kind of first truly, we had like a true international flavor to a draft. But then you have so many guys that were like underappreciated, right? Like Ben Wallace was a part of that draft, and people will forget about that. So it's, you don't at the time, you don't at all think that it's going to be thought of as one of the great drafts ever. Now I just feel so honored being a part of it, right? You think of the Hall of Famers you have in that draft, the MVPs, the champions. It's cool. It's something that I can point to my younger brothers and sisters or my children and say like, yeah, they did the thing a couple of years ago on that draft, and it was like cool, being a part of it, and allow my children to see and to relive those experiences.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing. Just looking back on it too, one perspective that I have of that class, like you said, is definitely the differences within backgrounds of everyone, right? And you pointed to the international side, but I almost look more towards just the difference in like levels of bravado and different personality types and just how everyone's situations or their careers kind of charted out differently. I think you, of all people, were more so just steady, like everything that you did along the course of your career. Like you were talking offline about your son and how it's not always about making a huge step. You know, it's incremental progress. Sometimes it's just getting 1% better. And so like you progress from that stage and you're playing in Vancouver. Talk about just the fact that, you know, you went somewhere that at the same time, the Raptors are experiencing all this, you know, meteoric fan support and whatnot, but you're building in the dark. Like, where did that resilience come from? What did it take for you to stay so consistent? You know, I think it was 5 or 6 years or even longer you were there. And, you know, a lot of people didn't have the ability to have their eyes on you as well.
Yeah, I think, you know, one, you know, like I was young. So in some ways, like that's what I knew. I didn't know anything, you know, I didn't have a different, you know, I can remember, you know, when I finally broke through and made the playoffs, I was like, wow, this is like amazing. This is so much fun. I want like this, it got to be this way every year. And, you know, I can only imagine if I had been young, you know, drafted to a really good team, made the playoffs, and then had that experience, it might have, you know, it might have touched me different. So, I mean, the only thing I knew was like keep working, keep trying to get better. And, you know, it was like to help our team, you know, get better. And we just took, you know, we took a different course than the Raptors. I think the Raptors, you know, they, you know, took a direction of kind of building with veterans. We went, you know, really young. And that's just, you know, like being young and trying to figure out how to win and be professionals. That's really difficult in the NBA. And you got to get really lucky that way. So it's just, you know, different, but I had a great time. You know, one, it allowed me to grow up and learn and you know, have to lead and, you know, have to get better and, you know, take a lot of, take challenges. But it also introduced me to, I mean, again, I'm a kid from Georgia and, you know, I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia. I had no idea where it was when I got drafted.
Right.
I can remember going there and sitting and I'm on the plane with my agent. I'm like, okay, where is Vancouver? And it was like it's Canada. I was like, yeah, but like where?
Right.
Like, well, it's next to Seattle. And you know, I played in the Pac-10, you know, Pac-12 now, but Pac-10 then. And he's like, I knew that because University of Washington. I said, okay, all right, you know, like so geographically, it made sense.
Right.
And you know, from there we went, but it's, you know, it was a totally different culture, different people. And you know, I learned a lot, grew up a lot. It was, you know, great. And I think, you know, basketball grew there. You know, we talk, you know, a lot is made of how basketball has grown in like the Ontario, Toronto region. But I mean, Steve Nash, Robert Sacre, Kelly Olynyk. I mean, the level of basketball and the awareness of basketball, education of basketball, a lot of that is attributed to, you know, those early years of the Grizzlies.
Yeah, but I still think a lot can be said just about your persistence during that time. Because I think, and I don't take shots against one generation versus the next, but I think people in general, we all at times struggle with staying committed to a thing, especially when we feel like we know the quality of work that we're doing and maybe it's not being recognized. So I was too young to remember exactly, but I heard a story that like Steve Francis almost came to the Grizzlies. Like you guys had a chance to link there. What would that have been like to play with another future?
So like in his draft is kind of, you know, I'm not, you know, saying anything that isn't like public, but in his draft, we drafted him, right? Like the Grizzlies drafted Steve, and you know, he said he would not, he didn't want to play there, he wasn't going to come. So, you know, that resulted in you know, him being traded to the Rockets from, you know, I think the most notable part of that was like, you know, players was like Othello Harrington and Michael Dickerson. But you know, obviously he was a you know, great talent. You know, it would have been great, but you know, I ended up, you know, a couple years later, you know, drafting Mike Bibby, who, you know, was a, you great teammate, great competitor, had a great career. So I mean, and Steve wasn't, so many guys didn't, again, like, young guys. I'm from the Southeast. He's from, like the DC area. Like you don't know,
Yeah.
they weren't open to, say coming to Vancouver.
For sure. Almost an unrelated topic, but I think it's super important for just the people that watch this type of stuff, coaches, players, parents. How did you consistently make the business decisions throughout your career that allowed you to like maneuver around some of the pitfalls or bad deals, bad contracts, or stay away from the, I guess, negative influences that would have short-circuited your career? Because you seem to always been on the straight and narrow. I know you had to let your hair down sometimes, but I'm not going to name any names, but you didn't make some of the same bad decisions of others who were playing at that time as you.
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody makes, especially being young, you make, bad bad choices, and sometimes you just get lucky, and it's something that is not disclosed to everybody, right? So without a doubt, I'm sure I definitely made my share of mistakes. I think a couple of things. I think just in early on for sure, and I think this is something that is stay with me, that I never wanted to do things, be a part of things, work with people that I didn't think, this is like even as a young person, like my values and what I was about didn't line up. So I could be for a bunch of money or great opportunity. If it wasn't a place or something that how I was raised, and I could feel comfortable explaining it to my parents, then or my community, then I didn't want to be a part of it. I couldn't do it. And then from just pure making decisions in business and finance and so forth, there's so much you don't understand, and still, or that I didn't understand at that time, and we're always still learning. What I tried to do, I tried to surround myself with a diverse group of people that could be checks and balances for me. I tried to learn as much as I can and understand as much as I could. But I had my agent at that time. And some people don't like me saying this, but my agent at this time, he had no affiliation with my tax accountant, right? Or had no affiliation with my lawyer. Had no no one had my say financial advisor had no connection. Now they would meet and help me make decisions that were the right decisions for my career or for life, but they weren't connected. And in that process, I could always lean on even if it was an investment decision that I could speak to my tax accountant about, or I could speak to my agent about, and they would give me perspective. Now the person who was the expert, maybe I leaned on their expertise a little bit more, but that just gave me, especially early on, gave me like a system of checks and balances. I still in a lot of ways lean on that, but I think in the early in my early years, that really helped me educate myself and learn. And then it's so many, from a league standpoint, so many resources that the NBA offers just around financial literacy and checks and balances and answering questions. I tried to lean on that as much as I could. If I could, the one thing at a young age I wish I would have done better, if I can offer that, is I'd say the NBA, but coaches, in general, there's so many people, regardless of what area you in and what level or however, there's so many people that know more than you, right? So Korey, this platform that you have, that you created, you're sharing with other coaches, and there are young coaches that are coming behind you that want to understand, okay, how do I get into this space? What are some of the things that you've done? I see you're working with professionals, you work on pro teams. What can I wish I would have at a younger age, I think I've done better as I've gotten older, is like learning from, really seeking out, people to, learn from them, other, people, the, older guys that have come from before me, at even younger age. I think that would have been really helpful. I advise, all young, find, the guys that are really successful, that have done it really well, and, at a young age, first year, go and start learning from them.
I take away a few things from everything you said, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the first thing that I heard was the power of delegation. Like you made the decision, I want other people to focus on what their expertise is or what they're good at that can be a resource or benefit to me, so that I can focus on playing and being the best version of myself. And then that constant checks and balances. I think that's so powerful. The fact that at a time where most guys are egotistical and arrogant, or they just let their homeboy or their uncle do some of that stuff, you had the wisdom to say, you know what, I want everybody to be connected, I guess, to me, but not necessarily connected to each other. Like there was no opportunity for them to leverage or, maybe do something in the back or backdoor you where you can't see where things are going. Was that something you were raised to do, taught to do? Did you hear somebody else go through a bad situation?
Well, I think and I'll add, one, I start again, like I think it start like values, like that, you want to work with and be around good people. So I say that's one. Two, I think I try to like educate myself and understand, as a young player, like, I mean, you pay, guys don't realize this now in the G League now, some of the programs we have, we teach guys about this as they come in, is that, as a professional player, you'll pay taxes in every city and state that you play in, for example. So they call it like the jock tax. I wanted to understand that, like as a young player. Now I couldn't, I wasn't doing it, but I did want to understand. So I think education is a big part of it. And then, yeah, like having those professionals that can help and guide you. And in that, like having that setup, I just, again, and I got some, really good advice early. Early on in my time, I got really good advice that was the, this was a structure that, would help you.
Talk about transitioning after playing. I think, again, not just for athletes, not just for coaches, people in general right now are maybe having to shift gears because of COVID, different things that are happening just in society today, and maybe something they've been doing for decades or their whole adult life. They're now having to pick up the pieces and figure out where to next. You did that obviously as a player, shifting over to coaching in Sacramento and so many other opportunities since then. How did you rebrand and refocus after your whole life had just been playing basketball?
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing process, and I don't think it starts, like when you're in the moment. I think it's, like you're building up, you're always building up knowledge and experiences and relationships that hopefully lend itself to you, transitioning. And, like we always, in that process, right? Like nobody, stays, even the most tenured person, at some point they transition. So like even while you're in that moment, like continue to find time and place to like truly experience and educate yourself. Personally, I think a fascination I have is, just of people that, have success or have impact in multiple different, areas, arenas, facets of their life. And, that's, as I thought about myself, that was, a goal I had for myself. That, okay, I want to be a successful player, but, the thing that comes after that, I want to be impactful and then, continue to be impactful. So, I just tried to prepare myself that way. But I don't think it doesn't at all start with, and I've learned this even CEOs and leaders that I've met that as they've gone from one phase to another, it didn't start like 30 days before they were transitioning. Like it was a process.
Right.
And I think to your earlier point about like the kind of working behind the scenes, I think a lot of it is that, like, you see people get to certain stage. Not to I'm not to brag or anything, but I left school as a freshman, right? And I graduated. I did graduate from Berkeley. I have a master's. So like a lot of that work, and then beyond that, like the different roles and situations you are in to like continue to learn. A lot of that you have to do to get yourself to a point where you have the requisite skills. I think we're in an age where like at all different levels, like we want to like skip steps, and I don't think you can't skip steps. You gotta be committed to the process of getting better.
That's right. We either want to skip steps or we want an instant pat on the back.
Yeah.
Step, and that's not how it goes. So talk about just some of those like earlier jobs. We have a few minutes left, but how did being an assistant and then being an assistant GM, how did those different roles prepare you for where you are now as the president of the NBA G League, which in fact, you guys are having outstanding success. So many players are transitioning from where they are with you guys to them making, obviously huge impacts on their parent organizations.
Yeah, I think one, I wasn't at all when I retired, I didn't think I would, I would be connected to a team or go into basketball. I got lucky. The guys who ran the Sacramento Kings at the time, Jeff Petrie and Wayne Cooper, they asked me to stay and be a part of the organization and help some young guys, and that's why I started coaching. But what they really what they allowed me to do, they like opened up the organization for me, and they just allowed me, they asked me to help in one area, but they gave me the kind of open door policy to go and learn as much as I could. So I would sit in their scouting and management meetings. After I worked with guys, I would go over and have lunch with the team president and the CFO. And that just, like that opened my mind to truly like the business of basketball and the business of, sport. And then that kind of ignited something in me, and I just wanted to keep learning and growing. And I think all of those experiences from, playing, I think I have an appreciation or understanding of playing, and even player developing and growing, coaches, someone scouting and, front office, to even, like the small businesses of our teams and, understanding, how our teams need to grow and want to grow. All of those are like experiences that, just come from my, my background. I've been around, being in Vancouver, I've been a part of launching a franchise. So, and, and all of our teams being in like these distinct markets, what it's about, educating people and marketing and putting out a good product. I've been a part of that.
What would you say, and I'm just kind of harping on your last point, but what would you say to coaches who are looking to improve, develop, add more value in your tenure, like you said, sitting down with those different individuals, ownership, what do they see as like the key characteristics of who they're looking for in an organization?
Man, the thing there is, and we're speaking specifically like player development, right?
No, just in general, anything that you believe makes a quality assistant, quality head coach, quality scout, video coordinator, just you know, it can be soft skills. It doesn't necessarily have to be anything hyper specific. It can be if you've got something.
I think for all of us, like the thing about team, you know, it's teams. It's still a team. It's groups that, you know, I think first you got to be able to kind of, you know, check your self-interest. You know, obviously, we all want to do well, and we're here, and you know, we have goals, but you got to be able to check your self-interest to, you know, what's important and meaningful for the team, and if to the group, and if you can find ways to add value to a coaching staff, to a coach, if you can find ways to help players get better and connect with players, if you can find ways to improve or help an organization improve and advance, and add value in those ways, like you're gonna have, you know, it may not come the way you want it to come, but you're gonna have success. Like you're gonna continue to, you know, find opportunities. You know, I believe that. I think that's the goal, you know, and you know, always, you know, like when I started, when I retired and I coached the first year, I tried to always think, you know, okay, what, you know, my experience as a player, I knew I wanted to be better. I wanted to get better. So a coach that could help me get better and a coach that could help me have success, I gravitated to that coach. So, you know, I'd say the same thing there. Like if you're a coach, you're a young coach, and you know, how you figuring out how you can, you know, distinguish yourself with the coaching staff, demonstrate your work ethic, demonstrate the value that you can bring, you know, to a team and to a coach, and helping him towards the goal of the team and winning and building a team. You know, scout, you know, whoever, if you're, you know, the guy to get coffee, you know, having the humility, whatever that is, you know, you being able to, and you'll grow, you know, being able to grow from there.
I appreciate that, Coach. And I know the coaches who are watching appreciate it too. I want to finish off talking about your foundation, the Future Foundation, which has done so many great things here in the Atlanta, Georgia area. Are there any other initiatives that you've got going on that we can follow, we can support, anything at all?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Future Foundation is the major organization that we've worked with, and the purpose there is to be able to help bridge the gap in resources for young people, and some people will say at-risk young people. There are young people within the Metro Atlanta area, and primarily around education. Like we, you know, not we do little if no, you know, athletic or basketball activities. Is really around helping young people, you know, prepare themselves, you know, through high school and on to college.
Awesome. Awesome. So coaches, players, parents, if you're watching now, make sure that you research the Future Foundation. How can people follow you? I know you're not big on social media like that, but is there any way that we can keep up with what's happening in the life and trajectory of Shareef Abdur-Rahim?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn. I probably can probably keep up, do a better job.
Oh, you good, man. You good. You got a lot going on.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm on, you know, I'm all on all those platforms.
He said he's on all those, y'all. He's on all those. So what's next? What's next in your development? Like, do you have any goals? And also, are there any books or any sources of growth that you're feeding on right now?
Oh wow, that's a good one. Try to see, what am I I'm gonna tell you what I'm reading. I'm digging in my bag.
Okay.
The book I'm reading right now is Team Arrivals by Doris Cairns.
Team Arrivals.
So I mean, but kind of a book I just finished. Chop Wood, Carry Water, and I don't have it in front of me, so I can't tell you the author. But Chop Wood, Carry Water. That's one I just finished. I recommend that for coaches, young players, you know, everyone. And then, you know, just personally, just trying to figure out how to continue to get better, continue to improve, continue to be impactful, work-wise, industry-wise within the space I am and beyond.
What's next for the NBA G League? Will we see more teams? Will every single team have its own G League affiliate soon? Or
yeah, we're close. So we're 28, NBA teams connected to G League teams, and then we have a Mexico City team. We have our Ignite team. So we're close. We want to get, Portland doesn't have a team currently. Phoenix doesn't have a G League team. So, absolutely, that's our goal, is to have 30 NBA teams with G League teams, and then continue to just be a platform for players, coaches, officials, people to, engage, develop, learn, grow, and reach their goals.
yes, sir. Love it. Love it. Well, coaches, players, everybody watching, thank you guys so much for taking the time to jump on with us. Shareef, it's an honor, my brother. I really appreciate this. I know you have a busy schedule, so we want to make sure that we're respectful of that. Thank you, guys. Make sure you stay tuned for what's coming next. God bless everybody.